My son gave me a Google Nest for Father's Day, said it would make my life easier. Just talk to it, Dad. Ask it anything. It'll play your music, remind you about your pills, answer questions. You don't even have to pick up your phone. He set it up himself, right there on my kitchen counter, next to the coffee maker. Spent about 40 minutes on it while I sat at the table watching him. When he finished, he clapped me on the shoulder and said, "There you go. You're all set." My neighbor Frank, 30 years Navy, communications, picked it up 2 days later when he came over for coffee. He turned it over in his hands, looked at the bottom, asked me to pull up the app on my phone. I told him I didn't have the app. His face did something I didn't like. "Who set this up?" "My son," I told him. "He set it all up." Frank put the speaker back on the counter very carefully. "You need to call someone about this," he said. "Not your son." I didn't believe him, not at first. But 4 days later, standing in a detective's office with a printout of my own bank records, I understood that Father's Day gift was never about making my life easier at all. My name is Harold. I turned 67 last March. I spent 31 years as a civil engineer for the county of Bexar, San Antonio, Texas, and I retired the way most men retire from government work, quietly, with a pension and a handshake and a whole lot of Tuesday mornings that suddenly had nowhere to be. My wife Louise passed 4 years ago. Ovarian cancer, 11 months from diagnosis to the end. We had 38 years together. I won't say much more about that because I still can't talk about it without my voice doing things I don't want it to do. What I will say is that after she was gone, the house got very large. My son, I'll call him my son because that's what he is, and it's what matters here, was 34. He lived 40 minutes away in a newer part of the city, one of those developments where all the houses look the same from the street. He had a good job in commercial real estate, a girlfriend named Patrice, a lifestyle that cost more than I ever knew. We talked on the phone every week or two, saw each other at Thanksgiving, Christmas, sometimes Easter. We weren't close the way some fathers and sons are, but I didn't think we were far either. I thought we were just normal. I thought the distance was geography and busy schedules, not something else. I was wrong about that. Father's Day, he showed up at my door with the speaker and a bag of breakfast tacos from the place on Blanco Road that I like. We ate together. It was a good morning. He laughed at something I said about the neighbor's dog. I remember thinking, on the drive to church later, that I should do this more often, that I'd let time slide by without grabbing it. I remember thinking that. The speaker sat on my counter. I talked to it sometimes, asked it for the weather. Had it play the Tejano station Louise used to like on Saturday mornings when she cooked. Small things. It became part of the background noise of living alone, which, if you've never done it, is quieter than you'd believe. Frank Castellano came over that Thursday like he did most Thursdays. We'd been doing that since Louise died. Coffee, maybe some chess, maybe just talking. Frank was widowed too, 5 years ahead of me, and he had a way of sitting with silence that I appreciated. He'd spent a career in naval communications, and he was the kind of man who noticed things most people walked past. He noticed the speaker immediately. Knew Father's Day gift. My son set it up. He picked it up, turned it over, looked at the label on the bottom, then asked to see my phone. I handed it over and he opened the app store and searched something I couldn't see from where I sat. Then he set my phone down and looked at me the way he'd looked at me the morning Louise called me from the hospital with her diagnosis. Steady. Careful. Harold, when your son set this up, did he use your Wi-Fi password? Yes, I told him. I gave it to him. I'd given it to him years ago when he visited. Did he use your Google account or did he create a new one for the device? I didn't know. I'd watched him do it, but I didn't understand the steps. Frank nodded slowly. I'm going to need you to log into your router and look at the connected devices. I didn't know how to do that. Frank did. He pulled up a chair and typed at my laptop for about 5 minutes and then sat back and pointed at the screen. There were 2 devices I didn't recognize. Both logged in the same day my son set up the speaker. I want to tell you I felt something sharp and immediate in that moment. I want to say I knew right away. But what I actually felt was a kind of gray confusion, the kind where your brain keeps trying to offer you reasonable explanations. Kids forget to log out. Maybe it's Patrice's phone. Maybe it's something automatic. Frank wasn't interested in reasonable explanations. He'd spent 3 decades in signal intelligence for the United States Navy. He knew what altered access looked like. He looked at me with an expression I recognized from the day I told him Louise was gone. Not pity, worse than pity. Sorrow. You need to talk to somebody, he said. Not me, not your son, somebody official. I drove to the Northeast substation on Nocogdoches Road on a Friday morning. I brought Frank's notes, the router screenshot, the name of the devices. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe I expected them to tell me it was nothing. Detective Alma Reyes had been with the San Antonio PD Financial Crimes Unit for 14 years. She was in her mid-40s, compact, with the kind of calm that comes from hearing very bad things for a very long time. She listened to everything I said without writing anything down for the first 5 minutes. Then she started writing and didn't stop. Mr. Scardi. Garza, she said. That's my last name, Harold Garza. I'd like to have our technology unit look at this. Can you leave the device with us? I said yes. I drove home with an empty counter and a feeling I couldn't name. Not fear exactly. More like when you're driving and you see something in your peripheral vision and you turn but there's nothing there, except you can't fully convince yourself you imagined it. She called me back Monday afternoon. I want you to come in, Mr. Garza. Bring whatever financial documents you have access to. Bank statements, retirement account statements, insurance policies, whatever you can put your hands on. I asked her if it was bad. She paused just long enough to tell me everything. Yes, she said, it's significant. The speaker had been modified before my son gave it to me. The device itself was legitimate, a real Google Nest, purchased retail. But the network configuration had been set up to route audio through a secondary server. Not Google's servers. Someone else's. Everything I'd said in my kitchen for 6 weeks had been captured. The Tejano station on Saturday mornings, the phone calls with my sister in Laredo, the one conversation I'd had with my doctor about my blood pressure medication, everything. Reyes showed me the technical report. I didn't understand most of it. What I understood was the last paragraph, which said in plain language that the device had been configured to function as a continuous room monitor with remote access to audio feeds. My son set that up. I sat in her office for a moment without speaking. Outside her window, I could see a parking lot and a strip of pale blue Texas sky. Normal things, ordinary Tuesday afternoon light. He's my only child, I told her. I know, she said. I have to ask you, what do you think he's trying to do? She turned her monitor toward me. On the screen was a document that looked like a legal form. I leaned forward and read the header. Petition for appointment of guardian of the person and estate of Harold James Garza. My full name. On a legal form my son had started filling out. The date on the document header was 11 days after Father's Day. I thought about Louise. I thought about how she used to say our son had her stubbornness and my patience, and she wasn't sure which was more dangerous. I thought about the morning she died, how he'd held it together better than I did, standing in the hallway of the hospital with his jaw set and his hands in his pockets and his eyes dry. At the time, I'd thought he was being strong for me. Now I wasn't sure what he'd been feeling. Reyes told me not to confront him. Not yet. She told me what Romero had told the man in the story I'd read once, somewhere, that if I tipped him off, whatever he was building would go underground. She needed evidence. She needed to know the scope of it. And then she told me the other thing. I want you to keep using the speaker, she said. At home, normally. We're going to set up a reverse feed. He'll be able to hear you, but we'll also be monitoring what he does with the audio in real time. I want you to start talking about your finances. Your pension, your retirement accounts, the house, talk about your health. Sound uncertain, she said, confused. Give him something to work with. I want you to understand what she was asking me. She was asking me to perform cognitive decline, to walk around my own kitchen pretending to be a man, slipping away so my son would accelerate whatever plan he had so they could catch him doing it. I did it. I want you to know it was the hardest thing I've done since I stood at Louise's grave. I started Thursday morning, made coffee, stood at the counter and talked out loud the way I sometimes did when I was alone, but louder now, more directed. I should really look at that annuity, I said to no one. What was the total value? I can't remember if it was the one through the county or the private one Louise set up. I get them confused. I should probably write it all down somewhere before I forget. I paused, poured cream, and the house. We paid it off in 2019. I keep meaning to look at what a reverse mortgage might look like. Louise always said not to, but she's not here to ask anymore. I hated every word. Each sentence felt like a small surrender, even though I was in control of all of it. I was playing a character, and the character was a version of me that didn't exist yet. An old man losing his hold on things. I felt sick performing it. My phone buzzed just before noon. Hey, Dad. Random question. Have you thought any more about the house? Like financially, whether it still makes sense to hold on to it? I read it twice. Those were almost the exact words I'd said 3 hours ago, alone in my kitchen. Still thinking. I wrote back. 3 dots appeared quickly. That little animation that means someone's typing. Then I could come over this weekend, help you get organized, just to make sure everything's in order. You know, financial stuff can get complicated. I don't want you to be stressed about it alone. I stared at those words for a long time. I don't want you to be stressed about it alone. The way you'd talk to someone who needed looking after. I called Reyes. She answered on the second ring and I read her the texts. She was quiet for a moment. Good, she said. Don't respond yet. Let me check something on our end. She called back 40 minutes later. We have the audio capture being uploaded to an external account. We can trace the access point. Harold, there's someone helping him with the technical side. This isn't something he set up alone. That landed differently than I expected, because it meant he'd planned it. Had planned it long enough to find someone to help, long enough to buy the device, have it modified, wait for Father's Day, bring it over with breakfast tacos, and sit at my table and laugh with me. He'd been planning this while we ate tacos. I kept performing for the rest of the week. I mentioned my pension twice. What's the total monthly again? I keep losing track. I said I gotten a letter from the county about some retirement account paperwork, and I wasn't sure if it needed my signature or if it could wait. I said, once quietly like a man talking to himself, I really should get him on the accounts, just in case. Each time, within hours, he found a reason to text. Each time the message carried that same gentle urgency wrapped in concern. Just checking in. Just want to help. Just want to make sure you're okay, Dad. He wasn't checking on me. He was checking on his investment. Friday afternoon, I drove out to a branch at Frost Bank on Fredericksburg Road. I'd been banking there since 1989. The branch manager, a woman named Carla, who'd helped us refinance the house in 2003, was still there. When I explained why I'd come, she pulled up my accounts and her expression changed slowly. The way weather changes when you're not watching closely. Someone called 2 months ago, she said, asking about the process for adding a cosigner to a joint checking account. Said they were the account holder's son and that the account holder had been having some memory difficulties. I never authorized that call. She said she knew. She said the employee who took the call hadn't been able to verify enough information to proceed, so nothing had been changed, but the inquiry was logged. I asked her to flag every account. Nothing changes without me standing in the branch in person. She said she understood. I drove home through the neighborhood Louise and I had chosen when our son was 2 years old. Same streets, same houses with different paint. Some of the oak trees we'd watched grow up were enormous now, spreading over the road so the summer light came through in pieces. I'd raised a child on these streets, taught him to ride his bicycle in the cul-de-sac 3 blocks over, watched him leave for college from the driveway of the house I still lived in. I thought about the last time he'd hugged me, Christmas. He'd been distracted, kept checking his phone. I'd thought it was work stress. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for a while. Then I called Reyes and told her about the bank. The next day, I went to my financial advisor's office, a man named Thomas who'd managed my retirement accounts for 11 years. He was careful and methodical, and when I explained what was happening, he pulled up my accounts without a word and scanned through the activity log. He looked up at me. "Harold, someone accessed your account portal from an unrecognized device 6 weeks ago. Your password was used, but the device ID doesn't match anything in your access history. No changes were made, but they were looking at everything. Total balances, beneficiary designations, distribution settings. 6 weeks ago was 2 weeks before Father's Day. He'd been in my accounts before he gave me the speaker. He'd already been inside looking around. Thomas locked the accounts immediately. New password, new security questions, new two-factor authentication to a number my son didn't have access to." When we finished, he looked at me across his desk with the measured expression of a man who'd had difficult conversations before. "I'm sorry, Harold," he said. "There wasn't anything else to say. Reyes called me that Sunday evening. We need to talk about Dominic," she said. "Dominic Farrell, 28 years old. Austin address, 2 prior convictions, 1 for wire fraud, 1 for unauthorized access to computer systems, both cases resolved with probation and restitution. My son's girlfriend Patrice had a younger brother, and that younger brother was Dominic Farrell. He'd modified the speaker. He'd set up the secondary server. He'd done the same thing once before to an elderly man in Pluggerville whose stepdaughter had wanted access to his estate. That case had settled before trial, when the man passed away. Reyes said it carefully, the way she said everything. "Your son didn't do this alone, Harold. He had help, and the person who helped him has done this before." I asked her what she wanted me to do next. She told me, and the following Thursday, I did it. I sent my son a text that Thursday morning. "Something I want to go over with you," I wrote. "Financial stuff, like you mentioned. Can you come by Saturday? I think I could use your help getting organized." The reply came back in under 2 minutes. "Of course, Dad. I'll be there at 10. We'll get everything sorted out." 2 exclamation points. A thumbs up emoji, like I'd told him his team had won. Detective Reyes and a colleague named Officer Bautista were already at my house when he knocked Saturday morning at 10:02. He came through the front door smiling, carrying kolaches from the bakery on Hildebrand, and stopped when he saw 2 people he didn't recognize sitting at my kitchen table. His eyes moved to me. "Dad, sit down, son." Something in my voice made him sit. The next 40 minutes were the worst of my life. Worse than standing at the bank in Charlotte. Standing in my own kitchen, in the house I'd lived in for 30 years, watching my child understand what was happening. Reyes walked through it piece by piece. The speaker, the router logs, the bank call, the financial account access, the guardian petition he'd started filling out. "I was going to tell you," he said at some point. His voice had gone flat and thin. "I was going to talk to you about it. I just wanted to make sure you were—" "What?" I asked. "Make sure I was what?" He didn't answer. "Dad, please." He looked at me then. He had Louise's eyes. He'd always had Louise's eyes, that particular shade of brown that went darker when he was upset. "I'm in trouble, real trouble. The debt's from the business. I didn't want you to worry. Patrice's brother said he could help. I thought we'd just look at some options. Options." The word landed like something dropped on concrete. I'd spent 4 weeks performing confusion in my own kitchen. I'd driven across the city checking on accounts. I'd sat in an advisor's office and heard that my own child had been inside my financial life without permission, looking for the exit route. I'd lain awake more than once in the dark thinking about the annuity and the house and my pension and the life I'd built with 31 years of county work and what any of it was worth if someone could simply decide you were no longer capable of managing it. and he was talking about options. I stood up. I walked to the front door. I opened it and stood there. Bautista had already moved to the other side of the table. "Dad," his voice cracked. "I'm sorry. Please." I looked at him, at the face I'd known since the morning he was born, at Louise's eyes in a face that was doing things I didn't recognize. "I loved you more than you'll ever know," I said, "and you were willing to take everything I have while I was still breathing." I walked outside, stood on the porch in the May heat, while behind me I heard Bautista's voice reading the rights I'd learned from television, but had never heard spoken in my own house. I stood there until the car pulled away. Then I walked back inside, made coffee, and sat at the table where we'd eaten tacos last Father's Day. The kolaches he'd brought were still in the box. I didn't touch them. The sentencing came 3 months later. My son received 30 months of probation, a $45,000 restitution order, 200 hours of community service, and a felony conviction for financial elder abuse and computer fraud. He lost his real estate license. Dominic Farrell received 18 months in federal custody. His probation had expired from the prior case, so this time they didn't let him walk. I wasn't in the courtroom. His attorney called me beforehand and asked if I'd write a character letter. I told him I had nothing to add to the record character. I changed everything after that. New bank accounts, new passwords, new beneficiaries on everything. The annuity, the life insurance policy, the county pension. I updated the trust I'd set up years ago and named a local charity Louise had always supported as the primary beneficiary. I talked to a estate attorney about a revocable living trust, which is something I'd been meaning to do for years anyway. It wasn't complicated, it just required doing. Thomas helped me set up quarterly statements mailed to a P.O. box only I had access to, not electronic. Paper, stamps, a box at the post office. Old-fashioned maybe, but honest. Frank came over one evening in late August. We sat on the back porch watching the sun go down behind the neighbor's fence. He had sweet tea. I had coffee. We didn't talk much for the first half hour. That was okay. "You doing all right?" he finally said. "Getting there," I told him. He nodded. "What you did took guts." I thought about it. "No, it didn't," I said. "Guts would have been if I'd wanted to. I did it because I didn't have another option." He thought about that for a while. Then he said, "Maybe that's what guts is." He left around 8. I locked up and went through the house the way I did every night now. Doors, windows, the backslider, the garage. I wasn't afraid exactly, more like careful in a way I hadn't needed to be before. In the living room on the bookshelf, there's a photograph from when my son was about 9 or 10. The 3 of us at Garner State Park, one summer weekend. Louise is wearing a yellow hat she loved. My son is on my shoulders, arms out like he's flying, laughing at something below the frame of the picture. I'm looking up at him. You can't see my face, just the back of my head, but I know what expression I was wearing. I was watching him and thinking, as I did 1,000 times in those years, that I would do anything to keep that kid safe. I left the photo there. I didn't put it away, didn't take it down. Just left it where it had always been, part of a history I couldn't change. I made dinner, watched the news, went to bed. Lying there in the dark, I thought about the Google Nest, still sitting in an evidence locker somewhere downtown. I'd bought a simple Bluetooth speaker to replace it, the kind with no microphone, no internet connection, no app. It just plays music. It just does what it says it does. I use it on Saturday mornings for the Tejano station. I don't think about it while it's playing. That's how I know it's safe. At 67, I know things I didn't know at 50. I know that love and loyalty are not the same thing. I know that grief can do things to people that look nothing like grief from the outside. I know that a plan built on patient silence can be months in the making before you see a single sign of it. I know that the people most likely to underestimate you are the ones who raised you to know better. I turned 68 this past March. My sister called from Laredo. Frank came by with a piece of cake his daughter had made. My neighbor across the street waved from her driveway. It wasn't the birthday I would have chosen, but I was the one who got to decide that. And that matters more than you might think if you haven't had it taken from you yet. So here's what I want you to hear if you stayed this long, not as a sermon, not as a warning written by someone who hasn't lived it. Just as a man sitting at his kitchen table, same table he's had for 20 years, telling you what he knows. Check your accounts, not just once, regularly. Know what you have and where it is. Set up alerts. Use a financial advisor you chose yourself, not one a family member recommended. Talk to an estate attorney before you need one, not after. Pay attention to the small things. The text that arrives too quickly. The question that's a little too specific. The concern that shows up right after you've said something you thought no one else heard. Trust is something you give. It isn't something anyone is owed. Not because they share your blood, not because you love them, not because you would die for them without hesitating. You can love someone and lock your doors. Those two things are not opposites. My son is out there somewhere, living with whatever he's living with now. I don't call. I don't write. I have a restraining order, and I intend to keep it. Maybe someday, years down the road, some version of conversation will be possible. I don't know. I can't predict it. I just know that right now, today, I have to be the one who survived this. And surviving it takes everything I have. The house is quiet. The speaker plays music on Saturday mornings. Louise's photo is on the bookshelf, and I still can't look at it without my voice doing things I don't want it to do. But I'm here. I'm still here. I still make the coffee and fix the hinge and call my sister and sit on the porch in the evening heat and do all the ordinary things that make up a life that belongs to me. And nobody, I mean nobody, is going to take that without going through everything I've got left in me. Stay sharp. Look after yourselves. And for the love of God, know what's connected to your Wi-Fi. I've had a lot of time to sit with what happened. Not the legal part, the sentencing, the paperwork, the account changes. That part had steps. You follow the steps and eventually it's done. What I've had trouble sitting with is the simpler thing. The thing that doesn't have a form to fill out. My son sat at my kitchen table on Father's Day and laughed at something I said. And somewhere inside him, at that same moment, was a plan to take everything I had. Those two things existed in the same person, at the same time, and I have no framework that makes that make sense. I've stopped trying to find one. What I do know is this. What happened to me didn't happen overnight. It happened in pieces, over months, maybe longer, each piece small enough to miss on its own. A password shared here, an account accessed there, a device placed on a counter with a smile and a bag of breakfast tacos. Nobody wakes up and hands their life over. It gets taken slowly, in increments, by people who are counting on you not to look too closely. That's the part I want you to hear, not the drama of it, the mechanics. Because the truth is, I was not a careless man. I paid my bills. I kept records. I'd worked 31 years for the county and managed my retirement accounts with Thomas for over a decade. I thought I knew what I had and where it was. What I didn't know was that knowing isn't the same as protecting. You can know exactly what's in your house and still leave the door unlocked. I think about Frank sometimes, the way he picked up that speaker and turned it over without saying much, just looking. He didn't panic. He didn't accuse. He just said, "You need to talk to somebody official." That kind of steadiness, that's not something you're born with. That's something built year after year from paying attention, from taking things seriously without taking them personally. I want to be more like that. I think most of us could stand to be. And I think about Detective Reyes, who asked me to do the hardest thing I've done since I buried my wife. Walk around my own house pretending to be someone slipping away. She wasn't cruel about it. She was clear. This is what we need. Can you do it? And I did it because the alternative was losing everything and never knowing why. That's what I mean when I say this took something out of me. Not courage exactly, more like the willingness to face something I desperately did not want to be true and keep moving anyway. Most hard things in life are like that. Not one big moment of bravery, just a long series of mornings where you get up and do the next right thing even though it costs you something. My son made his choices. They had consequences. That's not a moral I invented, it's just how it works. Every decision you make is a brick in something. Eventually, you're standing inside the structure you built, whether you meant to build it or not. I still have the photograph of the three of us at the state park. I still look at it sometimes. I don't know what that means. Maybe it means I'm human. Maybe it just means I'm not finished grieving something I lost long before I knew it was gone. What I know is that I'm still here, still making coffee in the morning, still calling my sister, still sitting on the porch in the evening when the heat finally breaks. The house is mine. The accounts are mine. The life is mine. And I intend to keep it that way.